The Garage War, Part 1, Opening Hook First. 3 seconds I stood in my own driveway at 7:30 a.m., staring at the chain and padlock on my garage door, while Barbara Chun, HOA president, in her red blazer and red cat-eye glasses, smiled and said 5 words that changed everything. This garage belongs to me now. Story begins. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 32 years old, a software engineer, and 6 months ago I bought my first home in Riverside Gardens, HOA, for $675,000. The property included a 3-bedroom house and a detached 2-car garage on the back corner of my lot. That garage was mine, according to my deed, my survey, and my title insurance, until Barbara Chun decided it wasn't. I met Barbara at the new homeowner orientation in September 2020. She was 66, with blonde wavy hair, red cat-eye glasses, and that red blazer she wore to every meeting. She'd been HOA president for 11 years. "Welcome to Riverside Gardens, Jake," Barbara said, shaking my hand firmly. She raised her hand in greeting. "Follow the rules, and we'll get along fine." For 4 months, everything was perfect. Then, on February 14th, 2024, I received a letter from the HOA. "Dear Mr. Morrison, your detached garage may be in violation. The structure may be located on common area property, not your individual lot. Appear at the board meeting February 28th at 7 p.m. Barbara Chun, HOA president. I was confused. My survey clearly showed the garage on my property. I called my title company. They confirmed the garage was 100% within my lot boundaries. At the February 28th meeting, 30 residents filled the community center. Barbara sat at the head table in her red blazer and red glasses. "Mr. Morrison, we need to discuss your garage," Barbara announced, raising her hands toward me. I stood with my documents. "Mrs. Chun, my survey shows the garage is on my property. It's been there since 19... Surveys can be wrong. Jake, our surveyor found your garage encroaches on HOA common area by 6 feet. The structure is partially, perhaps entirely, HOA property." "That's impossible," I said. My title insurance verified everything. Title insurance covers public records, not physical reality. Barbara replied smoothly. She distributed packets to board members but raised her hand to stop me from taking one. "Our surveyor's report is clear." Richard Foster, a board member who always agreed with Barbara, spoke up. "Mr. Morrison, if the garage is on common area, we could require you to demolish it. Or," Barbara said, raising her finger thoughtfully, "you could lease the space from the HOA. $1,000 per month, $12,000 per year to lease my own garage." "I'm not paying to lease my own property," Primera sighed firmly. "I want to see this surveyor's report and verify it independently." Barbara's smile vanished. "Are you questioning this board's integrity?" "I'm questioning a survey that contradicts my legal documents," I replied. My neighbor Tom Liu raised his hand. "Barbara, this seems unusual. Jake bought, with clear title. Shouldn't he review the evidence?" Barbara turned her cold gaze to Tom, raising both hands. "Tom, this doesn't concern you. Unless you'd like us to review your property lines as well." Tom went quiet. The threat was clear. The meeting ended with the board demanding I stop using the garage. "I refused," Barbara said ominously. "We'll see about that." 2 days later, Tom waited in my driveway looking nervous. "Jake, meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street in an hour. You need to know something." At the coffee shop, Tom leaned close and whispered, "This isn't the first time Barbara's done this. 3 years ago, she went after the Hendersons, who lived in your house. Same garage, same claim about common area. She demanded $800 per month lease." "What happened?" I asked. "They fought for 6 months, spent over $40,000 in legal fees, finally gave up and sold. Harold Martinez bought the house from them." Tom raised his hand nervously. "Here's what's interesting. Barbara never bothered Harold about the garage. Not once in 22 years. Why not?" Tom looked around. then showed me photos on his phone, because Harold let Barbara store her things in the garage, her late husband's vintage car, boxers, furniture. She used it as free storage for 2 decades. When Harold got sick and sold, Barbara lost her storage space. Now you own the house, and she wants the garage back. The photos showed Barbara's own garage, packed with boxers and junk like a hoarder's. She can't just take my property, I said. She's HOA president. She controls the board and has access to $35,000 in HOA legal funds. The Hendersons spent $40,000 and lost. Barbara knows every lawyer, every trick. Anyone who stands up to her gets targeted. That night I researched HOA law and reviewed my documents. Everything supported my ownership. But Barbara had power and resources. On March 5th, 3 days later, I woke at 7:15 a.m. and looked out at my garage. There was a chain and padlock on the door. A chain I hadn't put there. I ran outside. The chain was heavy-duty professional grade. A notice was posted by order of Riverside Gardens HOA. This structure is on common area property and is secured pending dispute resolution. Removing this security device is vandalism and will result in fines and legal action. Barbara Chun, HOA president. I heard footsteps. Barbara Chun walked across my backyard in her red blazer and red glasses, smiling. "Good morning, Jake," Barbara said pleasantly, raising her hand in a wave. "I hope you received our notice. As president, I have authority to secure HOA property." "This is my property," I said, shaking. "This is illegal. According to our surveyor, it's not your property," Barbara replied. She walked to the garage and put her hand on it, as if claiming it. "This is HOA, common area. I have a duty to protect HOA assets." "I'm calling the police." Barbara laughed, raising her hand to her mouth. "The police won't help with a civil property dispute. This is an HOA matter. Or you could lease the space. $800 per month is quite reasonable." "I will never pay you $1, I said. "I'm hiring a lawyer today." "That's your right," Barbara said. She raised her finger as if remembering something. "Oh, and Jake, the bylaws state any homeowner in litigation against the HOA cannot use community amenities, pool, clubhouse, gym, guest parking. Just so you know." She walked away, leaving me locked out of my own garage. I called police. Officer Martinez arrived, examined my documents, and shook his head. "Mr. Morrison, this is a civil dispute. You need a lawyer. I can't remove the lock without a court order." I called 3 lawyers. The third, David Chun, agreed to meet me that afternoon. After reviewing my documents, he said, "Your property documents are solid. The garage is yours. But fighting this could cost $30,000 to $50,000 and take 6 months to 2 years. "I don't have $30,000, I admitted. "Then negotiate with Barbara. Maybe she'll accept a one-time payment instead of monthly lease." "I shouldn't pay her anything." "You're right, but the question is what you can afford to fight for. Barbara knows most people can't afford years of litigation. What would you do in this situation? Would you fight back or try to negotiate? Let us know in the comments. That evening, I posted about my situation on a private neighborhood social media group. I included photos of the locked garage in my survey, asking if others had issues with Barbara. Within 2 hours, 17 responses. 17 residents with stories of Barbara's overreach, fake violations, and intimidation. People had been afraid to speak up alone. Tom's wife, Sandra, messaged, "My brother is an investigative journalist for the San Diego Tribune. He wants to interview you." Maria Santos wrote, "Barbara charged my mother $5,000 in fake violations last year. Mom paid because she was terrified." Frank Stevens called, "Jake, that garage has been on your property since 1997. I watched them build it. I have photos proving it. But I didn't know Barbara was reading every message, screenshotting everything, planning her." On March 6th, I received a certified letter. The HOA's attorney was suing me for slander against HOA leadership, harassment of officers, organizing residents against the HOA, and trespassing on HOA property. Total damages sought, $75,000. Barbara was trying to destroy me financially. If she won, I'd lose everything. If you were in Jake's position, how far would you go to fight back? What would be your next move? Tell us in the comments. My phone buzzed. Tom texted, "Saw something you need to know. Meet me at your garage now." I went to my backyard. Tom stood by the garage with his phone, recording. He raised his hand urgently. "Jake, look." He showed me security footage from his camera that partially viewed my garage. The footage showed Barbara at 9:30 p.m. the night before, walking across my yard with two men carrying boxers, loading them into my garage through a side window. "She's not just locking you out," Tom said, voice shaking. "She's using your garage for storage while you can't access it. This isn't a property dispute. This is theft." I stared at the video, then at the locked garage. Barbara had made a critical error. She'd gotten greedy and created evidence of her true intent. "Tom, we need to get into that garage and document what she's storing," I said, "before she realizes we have this footage." Tom looked nervous, raising his hand. "She'll sue you for trespassing. She's already suing me. But if we prove she's using my garage for personal storage while claiming it's HOA property, we expose her scheme. That's fraud." "How do we get in?" "The same way Barbara's guys did. Through that side window. It's my property." That night, at 11:45 p.m., Tom served as lookout, while I pried open the side window and climbed in. I turned on my phone's flashlight and nearly dropped it. The garage was packed with dozens of boxers labeled B. Chun furniture, Christmas decorations, clothes, photo albums, a vintage car under a tarp, years of Barbara's belongings stored in what she claimed was HOA common area. I photographed everything, every box label, every piece of furniture, every item clearly belonging to Barbara personally, not the HOA. The evidence was overwhelming. As I climbed back out, I heard a car door slam in front of my house. Footsteps. Voices. One voice was Barbara Chun. She had returned, and she wasn't alone. I froze halfway out the window, my heart pounding. Tom grabbed my arm and pulled me out, raising his hand frantically toward the bushes. We dove behind the hedges, separating my yard from his just as flashlight beams swept across the garage. "I'm telling you, something's wrong," Barbara's voice carried through the night. She sounded agitated, not her usual controlled tone. "The window looks disturbed." "Barbara, you're being paranoid," a man's voice replied. I recognized it as Richard Foster from the board. "Nobody's going to break into a garage they think they own." "That's exactly why they would," Barbara snapped. I heard keys jingling, then the sound of the padlock being removed. "I know that Morrison boy. He's not going to just accept this. He's going to fight." The garage door rolled up. Light flooded out. From our hiding spot 20 feet away, Tom and I held our breath. "See?" Richard said. "Everything's fine. Your stuff is exactly where we left it." "Check the window," Barbara ordered. She raised her voice. "And check those boxers in the back. Make sure nothing's been moved." My stomach dropped. I had moved some boxers to photograph labels clearly. If they noticed, they'd know someone had been inside. We heard footsteps inside the garage, things being shifted around. Tom looked at me with wide eyes, raising his hand in a "what do we do?" gesture. I shook my head slightly. We couldn't run now without being seen. "Barbara," Richard called from inside. "Some of these boxers are definitely out of position. And look, there are fresh fingerprints in the dust on this car." Silence. Then Barbara's voice, cold and sharp. "He was here. Morrison was in this garage tonight. That little fool just gave me everything I need to destroy him." "What do you want to do?" Richard asked. "Call the police." Report a break-in. I want him arrested for trespassing and burglary. Tonight, Barbara's laugh was harsh. Let's see him fight an HOA lawsuit and criminal charges simultaneously. By the time we're done, he'll be bankrupted and in jail. Tom grabbed my arm, his expression terrified. We were trapped. If we stayed, Barbara might find us. If we ran, she'd hear us. And she was calling the police right now. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and texted my lawyer, David Chun. Emergency. Barbara calling police. Clem's eye broke into garage. Have evidence she's using it for personal storage. What do I do? The three dots appeared immediately. David was awake. His response came seconds later. Do not talk to police without me. I'm coming now. Stay away from garage. Do not admit you entered IT. But it was too late for that. Barbara was already on her phone in the garage, and I could hear her talking to what sounded like 911 dispatch. Yes, officer. I need to report a break-in at 147 Maple Drive. The HOA garage that's currently secured due to a property dispute. Someone broke the window and entered illegally tonight. ... End of part 1. Word count 2,500. Cliffhanger. Barbara is calling the police on Jake. Will he be arrested? How will he explain the photos without admitting he entered the garage? And what will happen when police see all of Barbara's personal belongings in what she claims is HOA property? Find out in Part 2. The Garage War. Part 2. I froze behind the hedge. Tom grabbed my arm, shaking. Barbara's voice carried through the night as she spoke to police. Yes, officer. Someone broke into the HOA garage at 147 Maple Drive. I'm HOA President Barbara Chun. Intruder may still be here. From 20 feet away, I saw flashlight beams sweeping my backyard. Tom raised his hand frantically. Toward his house. We needed to move, but running now meant being heard. Stay still, I whispered. Don't breathe loud. Car doors slammed. Red and blue lights flashed across the neighborhood. At least 2 police cars had arrived. Mrs. Chun. Riverside Police. Where's the break-in? Right here, officers, Barbara said, raising her hand toward the garage. Someone pried open this window. Items inside were moved, fresh fingerprints everywhere. 2 officers approached with flashlights. They entered the garage with hands-on weapons. Tom and I pressed flat against the ground, barely breathing. Clear, an officer said. Emerging. No one inside. But the window was forced open recently. Items appear moved. I want to file charges, Barbara said, raising her hand. Jake Morrison did this. The homeowner. He's been harassing me over a property dispute. He threatened me yesterday. A younger officer pulled out a notebook. Ma'am, what's stored here? HOA property, Barbara said quickly. Maintenance supplies and equipment I manage as president. These boxers say B. Chun, the older officer noted. Is that you? Yes, Barbara Chun. I'm president. Those are HOA records I manage. The younger officer examined the window. Ma'am, there are pry marks on the inside frame, too. This window's been opened from inside multiple times, days or weeks old. Barbara's expression flickered. I don't know about that. Maybe the previous owner? Previous owner sold 6 months ago? The officer said. You said this is HOA property. Who has keys? I do. As president, I have keys to all common structures. The older officer walked around the garage. Mrs. Chun. Honestly, this doesn't look like typical break-in. Nothing stolen or destroyed. Items moved, but not damaged. These boxers with your name? Any personal property stored here? Absolutely not, Barbara said firmly, raising both hands. Everything here belongs to the HOA. I can provide inventory if needed. That would help, because if we're pursuing charges, we need to establish what property was at risk and who owns it. Barbara hesitated. Of course, I'll prepare inventory. Are you questioning Morrison or not? We'll speak with him. Stay here. The officers walked toward my house. Barbara pulled out her phone. "Richard, it's me. Police are here. They're asking about what's in the garage. They noticed my name on boxers. We have a problem." She listened. "No," I said, "it's all HOA property, but they want inventory. We need to move everything out tonight. Get David. Meet me here in 30 minutes. Tom's grip tightened on my arm. Barbara was planning to remove evidence tonight, but she didn't know I'd photographed everything. Pounding on my front door, Jake Morrison. Riverside Police, more pounding. After 5 minutes, the officers returned. He's not answering. Car's not here either. Know where he might be. No idea, Barbara said, raising her hands. Probably ran when he saw police lights. We'll try tomorrow. Mrs. Chun, don't disturb anything in that garage. This is potentially a crime scene. We may need fingerprints and evidence. Barbara went pale, but I need to access it. HOA business. Not until we complete investigation, the officer said firmly. If you enter before we clear it, you could face charges yourself. After police left, Barbara stood by the garage. Phone to her ear. Richard, change of plans. Police said, don't touch the garage. They might dust for prints. Pause. If Morrison's prints are there, he's arrested. But if they document what's inside, ... double quotes, another pause. We need to find Morrison tonight. Offer him whatever it takes. 20,000, 50,000. Whatever makes this go away. She hung up and drove away. Tom and I waited 5 minutes, then crawled to his back door. Inside, we collapsed on his couch. Tom raised both hands to his face. This is insane. Barbara's trying to bribe you, destroy evidence. This is criminal. I know, I said, pulling out my phone. And I have proof. Photos of everything. Time-stamped. I called David Chun. He answered despite it being 1 a.m. Jake, where are you? Police called looking for you. I'm safe. David, I got photos. Everything in that garage. Barbara's personal stuff. Boxes with her name, furniture, vintage, car, decorations. Nothing HOA related. She lied to police. Excellent. But Jake, turn yourself in tomorrow morning. If police think you're running, you look guilty. I'm not running. And David, I overheard Barbara. She's offering bribes. 20,000, maybe 50,000. She's planning to remove evidence. She told police not to enter? David asked. That's obstruction if she removes anything. Record everything. This case just got stronger. What would you do? Accept the bribe or keep fighting? Comment below. At 8 a.m., I walked into Riverside Police Station with David. Tom had driven me since my car was at my house. I'm Jake Morrison, I told the desk sergeant. Officers are looking for me about 147 Maple Drive. Within minutes, Officers Martinez and Davis appeared. Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming. We have questions about alleged break-in at the HOA garage. My client will cooperate fully, David said, raising his hand. But first, we have evidence about fraudulent claims Barbara Chun made last night. In the interview room, I showed them my phone photos. Dozens of boxers labeled B. Chun furniture. Vintage car. Christmas decorations. Photo albums. Mrs. Chun told you this was HOA property, I said. These photos prove otherwise. Everything's her personal belongings. She's using my garage, which she claims is common area, as personal storage. Officer Martinez studied the photos, raising his hand to zoom in. Timestamped 11:47 p.m. last night, less than an hour before she called us. Correct, I said. I entered my own garage to document what was stored after my neighbors showed me security footage of Barbara loading boxers through the window 3 nights ago. You admit entering the garage? I entered my own property. I corrected. My deed. survey, and title insurance confirm it's mine. Barbara's claim, its common area, is fraudulent. She invented that to continue using my garage for storage, like she did with the previous owner for 22 years. David pulled out a folder. Officers, I have affidavits from 3 previous homeowners, neighbor testimony, and documentation showing Barbara's pattern of abuse. She did this before. The Henderson family 3 years ago, same house, same garage, same fraudulent claims. They spent $40,000 fighting and gave up. Officer Martinez leaned back. So this isn't about break-in. It's about an HOA president falsely claiming property for personal use. Exactly, David said. Last night, Mrs. Chun lied to officers. She said everything was HOA property. These photos prove that's false. She also said boxers with her name contained HOA records. I bet if you inventory them, you'll find personal belongings. We'd need a warrant for the boxers. Then get one, I said. Barbara called someone last night after you left. Primera, Oberea, RD. She's planning to remove everything before you return. She knows if you document what's really there, her scheme falls apart. Officer Martinez stay here while we verify things. They left. David and I waited 45 minutes. When Martinez returned, his expression had changed. Mr. Morrison, I spoke with my sergeant and the DA's office. Based on your evidence, we're not charging you with breaking and entering. However, we're opening investigation into Barbara Chun for filing false police report, fraud, and possibly theft of services. Theft of services, using someone's property without permission for personal benefit. If she's storing things in your garage while claiming it's HOA property, that's potentially criminal. We're getting a warrant to search and document garage contents before anything can be removed. What about the HOA's claim on my garage? That's civil between you and the HOA. But Mr. Morrison, attend the next board meeting. If Mrs. Chun's been lying, other board members might want to learn the truth. The next board meeting was March 15th, 10 days away, but the story exploded much faster. Sandra Lou's brother, the investigative journalist, published his article March 8th. Headline: HOA president allegedly uses fraudulent property claims to commandeer homeowner's garage for personal storage. The article was devastating. Interviews with the Hendersons. Testimony from Maria Santos about her mother's fake violations. Frank Stevens explaining Barbara's use of Harold's garage for decades. And my photos showing Barbara's belongings in HOA property. Within 24 hours, 5 other news outlets picked it up. Television crews showed up at Riverside Gardens. Silent neighbors suddenly found their voices. On March 9th, I received certified mail. Not from Barbara, from Richard Foster. Dear Mr. Morrison, on behalf of Riverside Gardens HOA Board, Barbara Chun has resigned as president effective immediately. The board has voted to suspend all actions taken by Mrs. Chun regarding your garage pending full investigation. The board has authorized removal of chain and lock from your garage. You have full access as of today. We apologize for any inconvenience. Sincerely, Richard Foster, acting HOA president. I read twice, barely believing it. I drove to my house. Chain gone, lock removed. Garage door opened freely. Inside, Barbara's belongings remained. Police had documented but not removed them yet. I took more photos for safety. Tom came, Ober, raising his hand. Jake. Barbara resigned. Board fired her. I got the letter. Is it really over? Not quite, Tom said, showing his phone. Look. A text thread in the neighborhood group. 73 residents. Nearly every household had signed a petition demanding Barbara be banned from all HOA activities and full audit of her 11 years as president. People aren't just angry about your garage, Tom explained, raising his hand excitedly. They're angry about years of abuse. Your case opened floodgates. Everyone's sharing stories. Fake violations, excessive fines, intimidation. The board's terrified of lawsuits. Over the next week, 3 shocking things happened. First, The DA filed criminal charges against Barbara, 4 counts: filing false police report, fraud, theft of services, and attempted bribery. The bribery charge came from my recording of her phone call offering money. Second, the board hired forensic accountant to audit Barbara's finances. Within 3 days, he found $57,000 in questionable expenses over 11 years. Non-existent management companies, vendors who were Barbara's relatives, contracts paying far above market rates. Third, Barbara visited me personally. I was working in my garage on March 19th when I heard footsteps. Barbara stood in the doorway, no red blazer, just plain gray sweater. She looked older, smaller, defeated. "Jake," Barbara said quietly. She didn't raise her hand. "May I speak?" I set down tools cautiously. "We shouldn't talk without lawyers. I'm not here to threaten, I'm here to apologize." That caught me off guard. I waited. Barbara took a breath, raising her hand to her chest. "For 11 years, I ran this HOA like my kingdom. I told myself I was protecting property values, but somewhere along the way, I started believing rules didn't apply to me, that I was special, deserved special treatment." She looked at her boxers along the wall. "Harold was my friend. When he let me store things, it seemed harmless, but then it became expected. Entitled, when you bought the house, I couldn't imagine losing this space. So I invented justifications. Property dispute, common area claims. I convinced myself I was right. You tried to steal my garage," I said flatly. "Yes," Barbara admitted, "I did. And I destroyed my reputation, my position, possibly my freedom doing it. Jake, I'm not asking forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I wanted you to know you were right to fight. Right to refuse bullying. I'm sorry for what I put you through." She turned to leave, paused. "The HOA will issue formal apology and compensation for legal fees." Board voted unanimously. Least they can do. Barbara walked away. I watched, feeling strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Do you think Barbara's apology was genuine? Can people like her change? Share your thoughts. On March 22nd, I attended my first board meeting as homeowner in good standing. Community center, packed with over 60 residents. Richard Foster stood at head table, raising his hand. First order. On behalf of the board, I formally apologize to Jake Morrison. The board confirms Mr. Morrison's garage is entirely on his property. All contrary claims were false. Board will reimburse Mr. Morrison $5,000 for legal fees. Applause erupted. I nodded thanks. Second, board hired new management company and is implementing oversight procedures. No single member will have unilateral authority. All decisions require majority votes, with resident input, more. Third, forensic audit revealed financial irregularities during Barbara Chun's tenure. Board filed civil lawsuit against Mrs. Chun to recover $57,000. We're implementing financial controls to prevent future abuse. After the meeting, neighbors thanked me. Maria Santos hugged me, raising her hands. "You did what my mother couldn't. You stood up and won. Thank you." Frank Stevens shook my hand. "Your generation gives me hope. You didn't back down, even when easier to give in." That night in my garage, truly mine now, I reflected. 3 weeks ago, locked out, facing lawsuit, threatened with financial ruin. Tonight, garage back. Barbara facing charges, HOA implementing reforms. But I thought about what could have happened if I'd been alone. If Tom hadn't shown footage, if Sandra's brother wasn't journalist, if neighbors hadn't found courage. I sent message to neighborhood group. "Thank you for standing with me. This wasn't just about my garage. It was about refusing to be bullied. We won because we stood together. That's what community means." Within minutes, responses flooded in. 73 households offering support, sharing relief, promising vigilance. Tom knocked, raising his hand. "Sandra made lasagna, want dinner." Absolutely. Let me lock my garage. We both laughed. My garage, my lock. My choice. Tomorrow, police would finish investigation. Next week, Barbara's arraignment. Next month, civil lawsuit. But tonight, I was just a homeowner who'd fought for his property and won, who'd learned biggest battles aren't in courtrooms, but encouraged to stand up and say no when someone tries taking what's yours. The war wasn't over. Criminal trial would take months. Civil recovery, longer. Rebuilding trust years. But the most important battle for my garage, my property rights, my dignity, that battle was won. End of part 2. Word count. 2,547 cliffhanger. Barbara resigned and apologized. But is she truly defeated? What secrets will the forensic audit uncover? And what happens when her criminal trial reveals the full scope of her 11-year reign? Find out in part 3. The Garage War Part 3. Barbara Chuhn's criminal trial began on May 5, 2024, in Riverside County Superior Court. I sat in the gallery with Tom and Sandra Lou, along with a dozen Riverside Gardens residents who came to see justice served. Barbara entered wearing conservative navy blue suit, blonde hair pulled back, nor red blazer. She looked smaller, diminished. The red cat-eye glasses were gone, replaced with plain frames. She sat at the defense table, raising her hand briefly to acknowledge someone and back her daughter. The prosecutor was Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Torres, 43, with reputation for thorough preparation. She addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about abuse of power. For 11 years, Barbara Chuhn served as Riverside Gardens HOA president. She had authority, trust, and responsibility. But instead of serving her community, she served herself. Torres clicked a remote. My photos appeared on screens, boxers labeled B. Chuhn. The vintage car, Christmas decorations, furniture. These photographs were taken by Jake Morrison, the homeowner, in his own garage on March 5, 2024. Mrs. Chuhn had placed chain and padlock on his garage, claiming it was HOA common area, but she was using this HOA property to store personal belongings. When caught, she called police and filed false report. Defense attorney Marcus Reynolds, 57 and expensive-looking, stood. My client made mistakes, yes, but this was civil dispute that spiraled, not criminal behavior. Mrs. Chuhn genuinely believed, based on surveyor reports, the garage was on common area. When items needed storage, she used what she believed was HOA property. No criminal intent. Over 3 days, prosecution built their case methodically. Frank Stevens testified about Harold Martinez, previous owner. Harold told me Barbara said storage is temporary, few months. That was 2002. 22 years later, her things still there. Maria Santos testified about her mother. My mother received citation claiming roof tiles. Fine was $7,000. Mother is 79 on Social Security. She was terrified, paid from savings. I hired independent roofer who said tiles perfectly fine. The Hendersons testified via video from Arizona. Mrs. Henderson cried, describing their ordeal. We spent $42,000 fighting over that garage. Legal fees, surveys, experts. Barbara kept escalating, threatening liens. Finally, we just broke. Sold at loss and left. Destroyed us financially. Tom testified about security footage showing Barbara and 2 men loading boxers through my garage window. Video played in court. You could clearly see Barbara directing men, pointing where to place boxers, raising hands to guide them. Then, I testified. Mr. Morrison, Torres asked, when you purchased your home, did you have indication garage might be on common area? No, ma'am. My survey, title insurance, and deed confirmed garage entirely on my property. No dispute, no cloud on title. What happened February 14th, 2024? I received a letter from Mrs. Chuhn claiming garage might be on common area. demanding I appear at board meeting. Did she provide evidence? No. She said she had surveyor's report, but refused to let me see it, demanded I lease garage from HOA for $1,000 monthly. Torres pulled up documents. Mr. Morrison, we obtained the surveyor's report Mrs. Chun claimed to have, prepared by Riverside Land Surveys, company owned by Richard Foster, board member who always voted with Mrs. Chun. Report examined by 3 independent surveyors. All say it's fraudulent. Measurements don't match your property. Calculations wrong. Conclusion contradicts standard practices. Gasps in courtroom. Barbara's lawyer raised hand to object, but judge waved him down. What happened March 5th? I woke to find chain and padlock on my garage. Notice said structure being secured by HOA. Chun came to my backyard and told me garage belonged to her now. What did you do? Called police. They said, civil matter. Called lawyers, posted about situation on neighborhood social media, asking if others had similar experiences. Did others respond? 17 residents, within 2 hours, all with stories of Mrs. Chun's abusive violations, excessive fines, intimidation. What happened next? Mrs. Chun sued me for $75,000. Slander, harassment, organizing against HOA trespassing. Were you trespassing? No. My garage on my property. But Mrs. Chun locked me out, so I entered through window to document what was stored. That's when I discovered all her belongings. And Mrs. Chun called police. Yes. She told officers everything was HOA property, but my photos show it was all her personal belongings. She lied to police. If you were on this jury, would you convict Barbara? Share your thoughts in comments. Defense tried painting Barbara as dedicated volunteer who made honest mistakes. Character witnesses described years of service, community involvement, dedication. Then Torres called surprise witness, Richard Foster. Richard had accepted plea deal 2 weeks before. In exchange for testimony against Barbara and guilty plea to fraud, he received probation instead of jail. Mr. Foster, you were on HOA board with Mrs. Chun for 8 years, correct? Yes, Richard said quietly, not making eye contact with Barbara. Did you prepare surveyor's report claiming Mr. Morrison's garage was on common area? Long pause. Yes. Was that report accurate? No. Barbara asked me to create a report that would justify claiming garage. She told me exactly what conclusions to reach. I knew it was wrong, but did it anyway. Barbara got my construction company several HOA contracts over years. Maintenance, repairs, landscaping. I felt I owed her, and honestly, I was afraid. She'd destroyed others who crossed her. I didn't want to be next. Did Mrs. Chun know survey was fraudulent? Of course. She dictated what it should say. She needed legal justification for her scheme. Barbara's face remained impassive, but hands clenched into fists. Torres continued, were there other instances where Mrs. Chun abused her position? Mani. She'd target residents she didn't like with bogus violations. If someone questioned her at meetings, they'd get cited within a week. She kept literal list of people she wanted to deal with. I saw it in her office. What was on this list? Names with notes. Find roof violation. Check paint issues. Measure hedge heights. Instructions for finding something to cite them for, even if nothing actually wrong. Courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge called for order. Did Mrs. Chun financially benefit from her position? Richard pulled out documents. She directed HOA contracts to companies owned by her relatives. Her nephew's landscaping company, brother-in-law's maintenance service. All at inflated rates, over 11 years, probably $200,000 in excess payments. $200,000. The number hung in air. Barbara's lawyer tried rehabilitating during cross-examination, but damage was done. When Barbara took stand in her defense, she tried maintaining everything had been honest mistakes. I genuinely believed garage was on common area. Barbara testified, raising hand to chest. Survey report said so. I trusted Richard, didn't know he'd fabricated it. But Mrs. Torres countered during cross-examination. Mr. Foster testified you dictated what survey should conclude. You told him what to write? That's not true. He's lying to save himself. Mrs. Chun, you stored personal belongings in what you claimed was HOA property. How do you explain that? Those were HOA records and supplies I managed as president. My name on boxes because I was responsible for them. So the vintage car was HOA record that belonged to HOA, used for community events. Torres pulled up photos. This is 1967 Ford Mustang. Registration records show it belonged to your late husband, Thomas Chun. Registered in your name. How is this HOA property? Barbara hesitated, raising hands. I was storing temporarily while illegally using homeowners' garage you falsely claimed was common area. Objection. Sustained. Rephrase, Ms. Torres. But point was made. Barbara's story was falling apart. Trial lasted 5 days. On May 22nd, jury deliberated 6 hours. When they returned, Barbara stood to hear verdict, raising chin in final gesture of defiance. On count 1, filing false police report. How do you find guilty? On count 2, fraud. How do you find guilty? On count 3, theft of services. How do you find guilty? On count 4, attempted bribery. How do you find guilty? Guilty on all counts. Barbara's daughter sobbed in back row. Barbara remained expressionless, but I saw shoulders sag slightly. Sentencing scheduled for June 20th. As we filed out, I felt strange mixture of relief and emptiness. We'd won, but felt hollow. Barbara had been tyrant, but watching her convicted and facing prison, I felt no joy, only sadness at how far she'd fallen. Tom clapped my shoulder on courthouse steps. It's over, Jake. Really over. Not until sentencing, I said. But yes, we're close. That evening, Riverside Gardens, HOA, held special community meeting. New board president, Elena Martinez, Maria Santos's sister, retired accountant, addressed packed room. Thanks to Jake Morrison's courage and testimony from many residents, Barbara Chun has been convicted on all criminal charges. Additionally, forensic audit has revealed extent of financial mismanagement during her tenure. Elena raised documents over 11 years. Barbara directed approximately $237,000 to companies owned by her relatives or associates. She paid herself unauthorized consulting fees, totaling $43,000. She used HOA credit cards for personal expenses totaling $19,000. Total amount misappropriated, approximately $299,000. The room erupted in angry voices. Nearly $300,000 stolen from their dues, their reserve fund, their community. The board has filed civil lawsuit to recover these funds, Elena continued. We've also implemented new financial controls. All expenditures over $500 require board approval. All contracts require competitive bidding. Monthly financial statements will be posted publicly. No single person will ever again have the power Barbara wielded. Applause filled the room. One more thing, Elena said, raising her hand. The board has voted to establish the Jake Morrison Community Integrity Award. Each year, we'll honor a resident who demonstrates courage in standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Jake, would you accept the inaugural award? I stood, surprised and touched, as residents applauded. Elena handed me a plaque in recognition of extraordinary courage in defending property rights and exposing corruption. Presented to Jake Morrison, May 24, 2024. After the meeting, dozens of residents came to thank me personally. Elderly residents hugged me. Young families shook my hand. Even the few who'd initially supported Barbara acknowledged I'd been right. But one conversation stood out. A woman in her 70s approached, raising her hand tentatively. Mr. Morrison, I'm Dorothy Chun. No relation to Barbara, despite sharing name. I wanted you to know my husband passed away 3 years ago. Shortly after, Barbara started targeting me with violations. She claimed my garden was overgrown, my house needed painting, my driveway had cracks. None of it was true, but I was grieving and alone and scared. I paid over $12,000 in fines over 2 years because I was too afraid to fight. She handed me an envelope. This is a copy of every fine, every citation, every threatening letter Barbara sent me. I'm giving testimony in civil case. Because of you, I found courage to speak up. Thank you. I accepted the envelope, raising it carefully. Mrs. Chun, you should never have gone through that. I'm sorry I didn't fight back sooner. You fought when it mattered, she said. That's what counts. On June 20th, 2024, Barbara Chun stood before Judge Patricia Williams for sentencing. The courtroom was packed again. Mrs. Chun, Judge Williams said, looking over her glasses, you held position of trust and authority in your community for 11 years. Instead of serving residents, you exploited them. You fabricated violations to intimidate people. You stole from community funds. You lied to police officers. And when caught, you tried to bribe your way out. Barbara stood silently, raising her chin but saying nothing. The victims in this case are numerous and varied. Elderly residents on fixed incomes, young families, people who trusted you. The damage you caused goes beyond money. You destroyed people's sense of security in their own homes. Judge Williams pulled out sentencing documents. On count 1, filing false police report, I sentence you to 6 months county jail. On count 2, fraud, I sentence you to 2 years state prison. On count 3, theft of services, I sentence you to 1 year county jail. On count 4, attempted bribery, I sentence you to 1 year county jail. Sentences to run consecutively, total sentence, 4 years 6 months, with eligibility for parole after serving 50%. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution in the amount of $299,000 to Riverside Gardens H plus $87,000 to individual victims. 4 years, 6 months, $386,000 restitution. Barbara's face finally cracked. She raised her hand to her mouth, suppressing a sob. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, upon release, you are permanently banned from serving on any HOA board or in any position of authority over community associations. You will be on probation for 5 years after release, during which time you will be prohibited from living in any HOA-governed community. The judge banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Deputies led Barbara away in handcuffs. She didn't look back at the gallery, didn't acknowledge her crying daughter, just walked with head down toward her future. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. I gave brief statement. Justice was served today. But the real victory is that Riverside Gardens is implementing reforms to prevent this from happening again. That's what matters most. That evening, I sat in my garage, legally and physically mine, without question, and thought about everything that had happened. 4 months ago, I'd woken to find a chain on my door and a tyrant claiming my property. Today, that tyrant was heading to prison, and my community was healing. But I also thought about Barbara's daughter crying in the courtroom, about Barbara herself, now 66 years old, facing 4 years in prison, about how power had corrupted someone who probably started with good intentions. Tom knocked on the garage door frame, raising his hand. Hey, Sandra's making celebration dinner. You coming? Yeah, I said, standing up, just processing everything. I get it, Tom said. Hard to feel good about someone going to prison, even when they deserve it. Exactly, I said. I wanted justice, not revenge. But justice sometimes looks harsh. Barbara had choices at every step, Tom reminded me. She could have admitted the truth, apologized, made things right. Instead, she doubled down, Suduli topolis. Those were her choices. He was right, of course. Barbara's fate was a result of her own actions, not mine. Do you think Barbara's sentence was fair? Was it too harsh, too lenient, or just right? Let us know in comments. Over the following weeks, Riverside Gardens transformed. The new board held monthly community meetings with open forums. Financial statements were posted online. Contract bidding processes were made transparent. The community garden that had been neglected for years was restored. The pool area was renovated using funds recovered from Barbara's misappropriation. The playground equipment was updated. More importantly, the atmosphere changed. Residents who had been afraid to speak up now attended meetings and voiced opinions. People who had hidden from Barbara's targeting now participated openly in community life. On July 4, 2024, Riverside Gardens held its annual Independence Day celebration. It was largest turnout in years, over 300 people, including many who had moved in recently, attracted by news that the community had cleaned house and reformed its governance. I stood by the grill, flipping burgers, when Elena Martinez approached, raising her hand. "Jake, I wanted you to know, we've received applications from 5 families who specifically mentioned your case as reason they chose Riverside Gardens. They said they wanted to live in community where residents stand up for each other." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy. "It's more than great," Elena said. "It's transformative. You didn't just win your garage back. You changed the culture of our entire community." As the evening progressed, I watched families playing, elderly residents laughing, children running freely. This was what community was supposed to be. Not fear and intimidation, but genuine connection and mutual support. Tom found me later, holding 2 beers. He raised one in toast. 2 garage wars, and the people who fight them. I clinked bottles with him. To communities worth fighting for. We drank and watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere, Barbara Chun was beginning her prison sentence. Somewhere, other HOA presidents were hopefully learning from her mistakes. And here in Riverside Gardens, we were building something better. My garage stood behind my house, exactly where it had always been, on my property, within my boundaries. Completely and undeniably mine. But more than that, it stood as symbol. Symbol of standing up when it's hard. Symbol of community coming together. Symbol of the truth that ordinary people can defeat corruption when they refuse to be silent. The war was over. The garage was mine. The community was healing. And for first time in months, I felt completely, peacefully at home. End of part 3, word count, 2,500 cliffhanger. Barbara is in prison, but is the story truly over? What happens when the civil lawsuit reveals even deeper secrets? And what will Barbara do when she's released years from now? Find out in the dramatic conclusion, Part 4. The Garage War, Part 4, 6 months after Barbara Chun's sentencing. On December 20th, 2024, I received an unexpected letter. The return address read, California Institution for Women, Corona. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was neat, precise, Barbara's handwriting. "Dear Jake, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you threw this letter away, unread. But I'm writing because prison gives you time to think, and I've had 6 months of thinking. You were right about everything. The garage was yours. The survey was fake. I was a bully who abused power for 11 years. I destroyed people's sense of security in their own homes. I stole from the community I claimed to serve. And worst of all, I convinced myself I was justified. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing to tell you that what happened needed to happen. You standing up to me saved Riverside Gardens from someone who had become a tyrant. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. I have 3 years, 6 months left on my sentence. When I'm released, I'll never live in an HOA community again. That's fine. I don't deserve that privilege, but I hope you'll know that your courage changed someone's life. Mine. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become someone Thomas would have been proud of again. Sincerely, Barbara Chun, inmate 73412. I read the letter twice, then showed it to Tom when he came over that evening. "What do you think?" I asked. "Is she really changed, or is this manipulation?" Tom raised his hand thoughtfully. 6 months ago, I would have said manipulation automatically. But Jake, she's facing 3 more years in prison. She's lost everything. Her position, her reputation, her freedom. What does she gain by writing you? Peace of mind? I suggested. Maybe. Or maybe prison really does give people time to reflect on their mistakes. Either way, the letter doesn't change anything. She's in prison where she belongs, you have your garage, and the community is better. Tom was right. Of course, whether Barbara's transformation was genuine or not didn't really matter. Justice had been served. The community was healing. That's what counted, but I decided to write back anyway. "Dear Barbara, I received your letter. I appreciate you taking responsibility for your actions. That's more than many people in your position would do. You asked if I think you've changed. I don't know. Only time will tell. But I do know that change is possible if someone truly wants it. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for. The community you left behind is thriving. We've implemented reforms, established transparency, and created an environment where residents feel safe speaking up. That's your legacy, not the tyranny, but the reforms your tyranny made necessary. I wish you well in your rehabilitation." Jake Morris and I mailed the letter and tried not to think about it further. But over the following weeks, I found myself wondering about Barbara occasionally. Had she really changed? Would she come out of prison a better person? Or would she just become more careful about hiding her manipulations? Meanwhile, the civil lawsuit against Barbara continued. On January 15th, 2020, the judge ruled in favor of Riverside Gardens HOA. Barbara was ordered to pay $200,000 in restitution, plus an additional $123,000 in legal fees and damages. Since Barbara had no assets left, her house had been sold to pay criminal restitution, her savings depleted by legal fees. The judgment was largely symbolic. The HOA would likely recover pennies on the dollar over decades through wage garnishment after her release. But the victory was important psychologically. It sent a message. Abuse of power has consequences. Do you think prison time alone is enough punishment, or should financial restitution matter too? Let us know in the comments. In February 2025, Riverside Gardens held elections for the full board. The turnout was unprecedented. 82% of homeowners voted, compared to the typical 20 to 30% in previous years. Elena Martinez was re-elected as president by overwhelming majority. The board now included Tom Leyu, who ran after I encouraged him to step up and lead. Sandra Liu joined as secretary. The new board was diverse, transparent, and genuinely committed to serving residents. They implemented more reforms, a residents' rights committee to review all violations before any fines were issued, quarterly community forums where any resident could voice concerns directly to the board, annual independent audits of HOA finances with results posted publicly. Most importantly, they established term limits. No board member could serve more than 6 consecutive years in any position. No one would ever again accumulate the kind of unchecked power Barbara had wielded. Tom knocked on my garage door one Saturday in March 2020. I was working on a woodworking project, a custom bookshelf for Sandra. "Jake, you should see what's happening at the community center," Tom said, raising his hand excitedly. "Remember Dorothy Chun, the elderly lady who paid $12,000 in fake fines? She organized a support group for HOA abuse victims. 23 people showed up today. They're sharing stories, healing together, and planning advocacy work to reform HOA laws statewide." I set down my tools. "That's incredible." "It gets better," Tom said. "They're calling themselves the Garage Warriors, named after your fight. They want to help other homeowners dealing with abusive HOAs across California." Dorothy asked if you'd be willing to speak at their next meeting. Share your experience and strategy. "Of course," I said immediately. "When?" "Next Saturday, 2 p.m. The following Saturday, I stood before a room of 53 people, residents of Riverside, Gardens, and neighboring communities who had experienced HOA abuse. I told my story from beginning to end, raising my hands to emphasize key points. The most important thing I learned, I said near the end, is that you're not alone. When I posted on social media about my situation, 17 residents responded immediately with their own stories. That's when I knew I could win, not because I was strong, but because we were strong together. Dorothy Chun raised her hand. Jake, what advice would you give someone currently fighting an abusive HOA president? I thought carefully before answering. Document everything. Every conversation, every letter, every violation, notice. Take photos. Save emails. Record phone calls if your state allows it. Evidence is your weapon. Second, find allies. Talk to neighbors. Build a coalition. Abusive HOA presidents rely on isolating their victims. Break that isolation. Third, don't be afraid to go public. Social media, local news, community forums, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Most HOA tyrants operate in darkness. Shine a light on them. Fourth, know your rights. Read your CC&Rs, your state HOA laws, your governing documents. Knowledge is power. And fifth, I raised my hand for emphasis. Don't give up. They're counting on you being too tired, too broke, or too scared to fight. Prove them wrong. The room erupted in applause. After the meeting, people lined up to thank me, share their own stories, and ask for advice. I spent 3 hours talking to homeowners who were fighting their own garage wars. One woman, Sarah Mitchell, told me about her HOA president who was trying to force her to remove solar panels. Another man, David Torres, described his HOS attempt to fine him for painting his house an unauthorized color that was actually on the approved list. Story after story of abuse, intimidation, and overreach. We're going to change this, Dorothy said after everyone had left. She raised both hands passionately, not just in Riverside Gardens, but across California. We're going to push for legislative reform. Mandatory transparency, limits on HOA authority. Protection for whistleblowers, real accountability. I'll help however I can, I said. Over the spring and summer of 2025, the Garage Warriors group grew to over 200 members. They organized letter-writing campaigns to state legislators. They testified at committee hearings. They worked with civil rights attorneys to draft model legislation. And in September 2025, California Assembly Bill 2047 was introduced, the Homeowners Bill of Rights Act. It included provisions limiting HOA fines, requiring transparency in governance, protecting residents who speak out against abuse, and establishing an ombudsman office to investigate complaints. The bill's informal name, the Morrison Act, named after the case that inspired it. I attended the committee hearing when the bill was first debated. I testified alongside Dorothy the Hendersons and a dozen other victims of HOA abuse. We told our stories. We showed the evidence. We made the case for reform. HOAs serve important purposes. I told the committee, raising my hand to emphasize my point. They maintain property values, provide amenities, and build community. But when they're run by tyrants who face no accountability, they become tools of oppression. This bill provides the accountability that's currently missing. The bill passed committee on a bipartisan vote. It moved to the full assembly. And on November 4th, 2025 exactly, 2 years after Barbara first claimed my garage, the California State Assembly passed the Morrison Act by a vote of 62-8. Governor signed it into law on November 20th, 2020. It would take effect January 1st, 2026. I attended the signing ceremony in Sacramento. As the governor put pen to paper, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. A chain on my garage door. A tyrant's overreach, the courage to fight back. A community finding its voice. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, the governor said, shaking my hand and raising it for photographers. Your fight protected not just your garage, but the rights of millions of California homeowners.
What?
Do you think should every state have laws protecting homeowners from HOA abuse? Share your opinion in the comments. In December 2025, I received another letter from Barbara. She had been following the news from prison. Dear Jake, I saw that the moratorium passed. I want you to know that I'm genuinely happy about it. The law will prevent others from doing what I did. That's as it should be. I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately. For 11 years, I thought my legacy was making Riverside Gardens beautiful and well-made. Now I realize my real legacy is the reforms my abuse made necessary. If my mistakes can prevent future abuse, then perhaps some good came from my terrible choices. I have 2 years, 3 months left in my sentence. I've been teaching other inmates to read and helping with the prison's computer literacy program. It's small work, but it's honest work. It's the first genuinely selfless thing I've done in years. When I'm released, I'll be 70 years old. I'll never serve on an HOA board again. The Morrison Act prohibits it for convicted offenders. That's fine. I don't deserve that privilege, but I hope to volunteer in my community somehow. Maybe helping seniors navigate HOA issues. Maybe advocating for the kinds of reforms you championed. Maybe just being a cautionary tale of what not to do. Thank you again for stopping me before I hurt even more people. Barbara this time? I showed the letter to the entire Garage Warriors group at our monthly meeting. We discussed it for over an hour. Do you believe she's really changed? Sandra Lou asked. I don't know, I admitted, raising my hands honestly. But I've learned something over the past year. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's also about rehabilitation and prevention. Barbara's punishment serves justice. The Morrison Act serves prevention. If her rehabilitation is genuine, that serves justice too. And if it's not genuine, someone asked, then she goes back to prison if she reoffends. Tom said simply. But we have laws now to catch people like her much sooner. We have transparency requirements, term limits, accountability measures. The system is better protected. On December 20th, 2025, exactly 1 year after Barbara's first letter, I attended the Riverside Gardens annual holiday party. The community center was decorated with lights and trees. Over 150 residents attended, bringing food and joy and genuine community spirit. Elena Martinez raised her glass for a toast. To Riverside Gardens. To transparency. To accountability. And to Jake Morrison, who reminded us all that ordinary people can defeat corruption when they refuse to stay silent. Everyone raised glasses and cheered. I raised my own glass, but felt uncomfortable being singled out. It wasn't just me, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. It was Tom showing me security footage, Sandra's brother writing the article, Frank testifying, Maria sharing her mother's story, the Hendersons coming back to testify, 73 households signing that petition, Dorothy organizing the Garage Warriors. It was all of us together. More cheers. People clinked glasses. Children ran around playing. Elderly residents laughed and shared stories. This was what community was supposed to feel like. Later that evening, I stood alone in my garage. It was my sanctuary, now half workshop, half storage, completely and undeniably mine. I had built the bookshelf for Sandra, a coffee table for Tom, and a toy chest for Maria's grandchildren. My woodworking hobby had become a way to give back to the community that had supported me. I thought about where I'd been 2 years ago. A first-time homeowner, naive about HOA politics, unprepared for the fight ahead. I thought about Barbara, who at that time was at the height of her power, believing herself untouchable. Neither of us had known how it would end. Barbara certainly hadn't expected to be in prison, and I hadn't expected to become an accidental activist whose fight would inspire statewide legislation. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dorothy Chun. Just got word 3 more California cities are adopting transparency reforms based on the Morrison Act, even though they don't legally have to until January. Your impact keeps growing. I smiled and typed back, "Oh, your impact. This was never just about me." "True," Dorothy replied, "but you threw the first punch. That took courage." "Did it take courage?" I wondered, or did it just take being pushed to a point where I had no choice but to fight? I honestly didn't know, but I knew this. I would never again stay silent in the face of injustice. I would never again assume someone else would solve the problem. I had learned that change starts with one person saying no and refusing to back down. On Christmas Eve, 2025, I received a package from an unexpected source. Inside was a small wooden box, handcrafted with surprising skill. A note was attached. "Jake, I made this in the prison woodshop. I thought you might appreciate it. Woodworker to woodworker." Inside are $23 in cash, every penny I've earned from my prison job over the past year. It's not even close to what I owe you, but it's a start. I'm sending similar boxers to everyone I hurt, $1 at a time, if that's what it takes. Merry Christmas. Barbara. I opened the box. Inside were 23 $1 bills, neatly folded, and a small wooden plaque carved with words. Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly. I set the box on my workbench, raised my hand to touch the carved words, and felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger at what Barbara had done, respect for her apparent commitment to making amends, skepticism about whether this was genuine or performance, hope that people really could change. Maybe all those emotions could be true at once. Maybe justice was complicated like that. On New Year's Eve, 2025, as midnight approached, I stood in my backyard looking at my garage. In the house behind me, Tom and Sandra were hosting a party. Music and laughter drifted through the windows. The neighborhood was alive with celebration. I thought about the journey from chain and padlock to statewide reform, from one man's fight to a movement, from injustice to accountability. My garage stood exactly where it had always been. 400 square feet of concrete and wood and memories. It had been the battleground for something much bigger than property rights. It had been the place where one person said no to a tyrant and meant it. As the countdown to midnight began inside the house, I raised my hand toward the garage one final time. Not in triumph, not in anger, just an acknowledgement of everything it represented. 10, 9, 8. The voices grew louder. The new year was coming. New protections. New accountability. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Cheers. Fireworks began exploding overhead. The sky lit up with colors. I walked back inside to join the celebration, leaving my garage behind in the darkness. But I knew it would still be there in the morning. And the morning after, and every morning after that. Mine, legally, undeniably. Forever. The garage war was over. But the legacy would continue, in reformed laws, in empowered residents, in communities learning to hold their leaders accountable. And somewhere in a prison in Corona, a 67-year-old woman was watching the new year arrive through barred windows, hopefully learning what it meant to truly serve instead of to rule. The war was over. Justice had been served. The community had healed. And my garage, it was just a garage again. Mine. Ordinary. Perfect. The end total word count across all 4 parts. 10,000. Final thought. Have you ever had to stand up against someone in power? What did you learn from it? Share your story in the comments below. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Remember, you're never powerless when you're willing to fight for what's right. Stand up, speak out, and never back down.